Mayor Bill de Blasio says after 100 days in office, more work needs to be done, and better PR apparently at the top of his list. This morning on Hot 97 Radio, de Blasio said, quote, "I think there's times where I didn't communicate well enough and I've got to do better. I think that's the bottom line." I also think, Dominic, that's an understatement.
That is an understatement. Trying to cut the mayor a little break. You know, he's a brand new mayor. Even though he told me years ago that he would be the mayor of New York, I didn't believe him when he was a city councilman. And when he ran in this race, few gave him a chance at winning. I say all that to say that he's made his share of mistakes, but maybe he's turned the step. It's smart when he goes on Hot 97, it is, because that way he gets to avoid what's wrong.
Who are you and what have you done with Dominic Carter? You've been since like October.
Not ready for prime time. Not ready for prime time. Now
Let's give him a little room here.
Well, okay, but he made those mistakes.
Are you feeling okay? Is there anything?
I'm feeling well. He made those mistakes, and it seems like he's learning.
My only thing is, how much you think it hurt him that his communications director, the photos with her and Spitzer, she resigns and that position unfilled. We've all been around elected officials and campaign managers. Some need them more than others, but there were so many amateur. I think what mayor would call a precinct house straight up and ask to get the guy kicked, or at least have a conversation? We've all heard our versions of it. You don't do that. And he's been around the game long enough. There's been a few of those where it just doesn't.
Well, see, he's got to learn, and he's learning.
Really?
I mean,
you got to learn that?
Mayors do that every day. It's just that they don't call the lieutenant.
You have your police commissioner.
You have your first step, right? You call the police commissioner, who will give you deniability, or you have your first deputy mayor do it. So he's learning. You know, I think he still thought he was the public advocate. And now he has to understand that every word that comes out of his mouth as the mayor of New York, you have a team of people like us that are dissecting every single word.
Okay. I am with you, Andrew. I don't know who he is. Vice President Joe Biden, he is known for sometimes putting foot into mouth, or at least engaging it before engaging brain. But anyway, the White House, as we all know, has a few times tried to clean up after, and we all like, though, Crazy Joe. But there wasn't much you could do after the vice president said this.
And you're comfortable with same-sex marriage now?
Look, I am Vice President of the United States of America. The President sets the policy. I am absolutely comfortable with the fact that men marrying men, women marrying women, and heterosexual men and women marrying men are entitled to the same exact rights, all the civil rights, all the civil liberties. And quite frankly, I don't see much of a distinction beyond that.
Well, in her new book, Forcing Spring, Inside the Fight for Marriage Equality, New York Times investigative reporter Joe Becker says the White House was furious when Biden got a jump on endorsing same-sex marriage before the president did, and senior advisor Valerie Jarrett accused Biden of being, quote, disloyal. In Becker's book, she says speculation that Biden's comments were meant as a trial run came from people not privy to the chaos that erupted inside the West Wing after an emailed transcript of the interview landed in the inbox of the White House press team. All right. I always thought it was more calculated, but if it plays out the way she said, he did the biggest favor he could do for the president.
Absolutely. And, you know, he's not the best on calculated comments. So I always thought it was actually, and I'm seeing it again, it comes across very genuine and not scripted. And, you know, he said what he thought. He sort of got out of script for a minute.
We do know, though, it made it look like the president had to follow the vice president on the issue, which is what happened.
Which is what he did.
Yeah.
Well, the mistake he made was he clarified early on by saying, "I am the vice president of the United States."
Right.
You know, what are you supposed
In case
to?
no one knew that. Yeah.
I mean, we got that part.
Yeah.
So I'm speaking
capacity.
on behalf of the administration. Is what he instead of saying what my personal view is. I mean,
I give Biden credit for, as you said, being genuine about it, giving a legitimate answer on that one. I also credit the Obama White House for following up on it. And one of their favorite expressions is never let a crisis go to waste.
Yeah.
They were able to actually use that as something of a pivot point for the president when it came to same-sex marriage.
I will say, just for me, sometimes I think people in the business of spin and they think too much about it. He thought about it. He felt right about it. He said it. right?
No, Richard.
I'm
you
telling
can't.
you,
You
they have
cannot speak on behalf of the president
No,
of the
you
United
can't.
States.
No, you can't. But my point is, the administration knew this is the position they wanted, but they didn't think the poll numbers there or whatever else. I think the public. I really believe this. Part of the reason Christie was liked before the whole Bridgegate thing was people believed when he said something he meant it, right? Okay, you did, but a lot of people did. I believe he came across as very authentic and genuine. Okay? And again, we all forget this after Bridgegate. But when an elected official of whatever level does this, I think it's the best thing that they can do.
Yeah,
Don't you agree?
Well, a minute ago you criticized De Blasio for sort of just being free in his comments and not disciplined.
No, I think what I don't like is he called up a precinct house and said, hey, you know that reverend you got sitting in there, kick him. I mean,
I agree, but I think there's, look, you have to be disciplined and you can't speak always just what you think. And I think from a communications point of view, the vice president probably was out of line by not limiting his views to being personal in nature.
And there's a difference between the White House and anywhere else politically in the country, because it's, you know, it's like a dog whistle. Anything that comes out of the White House, it goes everywhere, and people lose their minds about it sometimes.
All right. We've covered Steve Israel. Do you know the congressman at all?
Yes.
Okay. Well,
he's doing an awesome job.
Yes, and he doesn't want the job anymore because
I understand.
He says thanks but no thanks. The congressman does not want to head up the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee for the 2016 elections. The poor man's been raising money for everybody for the last 2 years. The seat's wide open, and Connecticut Congressman Jim Himes and Maryland Congresswoman Donna Edwards say they might be up for the job, and usually that's under threat here from party bosses. The worst part of elective office is working the phones asking for money. Am I right?
It's a very uncomfortable. I mean, there are people who don't find it difficult. I don't know about you, Mr. County Executive. I don't like it. No. We do it. It's part of the game. You want to be in there, you have to do it. But it's hard to ask people that you care about and who like you, and many of whom don't have much money to come up with money. I don't like doing it, but I do it.
There are upsides to that position, though, because you wind up essentially with an IOU from everybody in your party who you've helped get money to and help elect to Congress. Chuck Schumer was the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee chairman for years, and he's now the #3 Democrat in the Senate. There is a correspondence.
Yeah. Well,
there.
I have a funny story. I went to go. Actually, I had a meeting with Senator Menendez, who did the same job at the DSCC for the Senate Campaign Committee. He's in this office in Manhattan. One kid, I mean, he had to be 12, right, was sitting at the front. I mean, she was 20-something. He's at a phone. The kid basically all he did was dial the number. I had to pick it up, and he told me a hysterical story. And I'll clean it up because I'm not sure how much of it. But Harry Reid said, "Hey, I'd like you to, take over this position." And he said, "I just came off an election, majority leader. I appreciate it. Thank you very much." He goes, "I really want you to think about it." I said, "Okay." Thought about it. Said, "I thought about it." No, he goes, "I give it some more thought." And he's like, "Okay." I never heard from him, so I thought it was clear, and I was in the good. He said, the senator came up and said, "So, I'm glad you're taking that on." He's like, "I really don't want to." He goes, "You really do." And he goes, "Do I really have a choice?" Because you don't have any choice. And that's usually how these things come down. The person who has to run this either draws the short straw. They have to have the capacity to do it, but at the same time, imagine not having to do it for yourself, but you have to do it for a whole party. Oh my God. Come on. I mean,
it's thankless. It's
a
thankless job.
right?
Except that if you're successful, then you have upward mobility.
Yes.
But if you're not, it's just another piece of work.
And you got to watch your rear flank in the process too. I mean, Jim Himes, when he first won election in Fairfield County, only won by a few points. He's done better in subsequent elections, but there are times where you can have those jobs, and if you're not completely set in your own electoral prospects, you can have the whole rug.
And
pulled
also,
right off
you want to focus on your own race,
Right.
not everybody else's too.
But there is a reward, not only for the people who owe you, but to have a higher profile position like a Schumer in terms of, as someone who's like a junior assembly member at the very bottom, people look for ways to have more influence within these legislative bodies, and this is one if you're willing to do it.
And I might add, it is not just raising money. It is also selecting candidates that can win. And so these guys don't just have to raise money. They've got to go into communities and assess who they're going to support, if anyone.
Great point.
So that they really have a lot of responsibility for selecting the potential candidate and selecting a winner. And that's where, so much of this, where the success can lie.
Great point.
But you also don't get to break party ranks here if you're using that position. So whether you like it or not, you'll have to defend Obamacare if you've got this position.
Yes.
There are certain things that is part of the compact. Okay, coming up next. Did Mr. Met dodge a bullet here? You ask, what is he talking about?
Literally.
Well, Mr. Met says that he was threatened by the Secret Service a few years ago, saying if you get too close to the president, we will shoot you. We'll have more on that after this.